Martin Lewis is going to be writing to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, with his own personalised list of areas which highlight areas of financial injustice.
Well, Martin has also put out explainers on the so-called two-child benefit cap, which he says there's a lot of confusion over what it actually means. And he joins us now. Good morning to you, Martin. So you've got your list of things that you want to bring to the Chancellor's attention, haven't you?
Yes, well, many of them I was talking to with her predecessor. They're non-partisan issues. And they're all things which are about fixing unfairness in the system and hopefully things that won't cost the Exchequer too much. Of course, there are many other things that you could do, but you have to pick a list that you might have a realistic chance. So I start with child benefit. In the last budget, Jeremy Hunt agreed to increase the threshold on child benefit, but the real call was to shift it so that you stop losing child benefit based on the highest earning parents' income, and you make it a family household test. For the simple reason, you can currently have one family where one earns over £60,000 who are losing child benefit, where their next door neighbours, both parents are working, earning 59 grand, so earning nearly £120,000, and they get full child benefit. It's an unfair system. LISA fines, the lifetime ISA is outrageous, that many young people who've saved in the mechanism the government tells them to save for their first-time property, because they've now been priced out of the market, it's gone above the threshold, and the threshold hasn't increased, they're actually having to pay a fine to the government to take their savings out to buy a first-time property. It's a ridiculous structure that needs to end. One that's terrible, you know, carers across the country are unsung heroes who help save social care and the NHS and support their loved ones. If you care for someone over 35 hours a week and that person has a range of disabilities, you get carers allowance. You're only allowed to earn up to 151 quid a week, though. And if you earn 1 penny more, you lose the entire £81 a week that you get. It's a cliff edge. Other benefits don't work like that. They're tailored at a threshold. Now, the big problem with that is some people have earned over that threshold without knowing it. Say they've had a slight wage increase at work. They've continued to be paid for weeks and weeks and weeks, the £81. Then the benefits office gets in touch and say, hey, you need to pay it all back. We want £1,000 back from you because they were a penny a week over the threshold. And the final big one on the list is there's a scheme called tax-free childcare that is not about tax and is not tax-free. And lots of people don't claim it because they don't understand it. So I'm suggesting it be renamed to what it is, which is the Working Parent Childcare Top-Up, because it's a top-up to what you pay for childcare for working parents. And there's a whole host of other things about financial education, mortgage prisoners, debt letters, and the student maintenance loans in the letter too. I'm trying to rekindle the conversations I was having with Jeremy Hunt and talking to Rachel Reeves about these non-partisan issues.
Well, good for you. I mean, are these things that are going to cost much to implement? Because, of course, you know, the government at the moment is saying, well, we can't do anything that's not costed. It's all very much coming down to looking at the figures, isn't it?
Well, child benefit is just restructuring it and could be cost neutral. It's about restructuring it on a household basis. The LISA fines are trivial for the government. I mean, single-digit millions, which is nothing in a government budget. Carers allowance would cost. Changing the name of tax-free childcare wouldn't cost at all, although my hope is it would cost because it means more people would take up this really important support for childcare, which is within the government's policy. It said it wants that too. Financial education, very limited cost. Mortgage prisoners would cost, debt letters wouldn't cost, and student maintenance would cost. So some of them would cost, but none of them, these are huge sort of seismic expenditure in the billions. They're often relatively cheap in the Exchequer, and I hope if I were Chancellor, which I do not want to be, I would be looking for things that would help people right now that wouldn't cost a lot of money, but people would be very grateful when you did those changes. And fixing financial injustice is a great place to start that.
I always like challenging people on points that they make, but every time I listen to you, Martin, and today's no exception, I just can't see a flaw. I can't see a single flaw in any of your arguments. And, of course, the main thing is they're completely apolitical. There's no political ideology involved here. This is just about number crunching. Do you think she'll listen to you?
Well, I had a good meeting with the then Shadow Chancellor a couple of months ago before the election was called, and we sat down and we had a talk through these issues, and I felt she was listening then, much as I had a similar relationship with the previous Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt. I can't see a reason she wouldn't listen. That's not the same as saying she won't act. I would expect to get a letter back from the Chancellor. I've actually sent the letter already. My team spoke to her office and gave her a heads up that it was coming, and that was warmly received. So listen, I'm not predicting in any way any of these will happen, although in the past when I've done some stuff, we have seen movements and changes in the budget on the back of it. That's a reason for my timing now when we know a budget is coming. But all you can do is put the issues under their noses and hope.
But the thing is, you see, almost all the changes which you have suggested in your series of bullet points here, in this bullet point letter, I would have thought have already occurred to her, because when you explain them, they seem so obvious.
Remember, there are huge systemic issues with all the way that benefits and taxes and consumer policy work. I mean, you have centuries of legacy of broken things that weren't built for today's environment. So it's just a question of what you're due to prioritise. And there's a lot going on. You know, there's discussion at the moment about the two-child limit for universal credit and tax credits, which is the big discussion that's going on at the moment. And when you take something like that, which is very important, it draws a lot of focus. So that's why the job of someone like me is just to say, hold on, there are other things too. Look at that, of course, but there are other things that could be done as well.
And what are your thoughts on the so-called two-child benefit cap in that case? Because obviously, as you say, there's a lot of talk about it at the moment. You know, Sir Keir Starmer has suspended 7 Labour MPs.
My main thought is there's no such thing as a two-child benefit cap. It's completely misnamed and misexplained, and many journalists are getting it wrong. Let's be very plain. This is nothing to do with child benefit, which it keeps being spoken about. There is no limit on the number of children you can claim on child benefit. That is a universal payment. You get it for every child, even if you've got 20 children, though it is subject to the benefits cap. The benefits cap is also nothing to do with this issue, because the issue is not about a benefits cap. There is a cap on the total amount of money you can get from benefits. What is actually being discussed, and I do want journalists and media people out there to correct their phrasing, because the confusion I've got with many people worried about child benefit when this doesn't affect child benefit. What we're talking about is the two-child limit, not a cap, for universal credit and tax credits. Within the universal credit and tax credit system, if you have more than 2 children, the increased cost due to having more than 2 children, if they were born after April 2017, are not taken into consideration, and you don't get more money, with the exclusion of childcare. You would still get extra help if you're paying for childcare, and with the exclusion of multiple births. It's nothing to do with child benefit. It's not a benefit cap. It should correctly be called the two-child limit on universal credit and tax credits. I'm not going to get involved in the political debate on that. It's too political for me. But I am getting involved in the communication of that, because I think the media has actually been culpable by using this phrase two-child benefit limit, that people think it's all about two-child benefit cap, that it's not a cap and it's not about child benefit.
Well, listen, it's a good job.
Credit and tax credits.
We've got you to explain it all, isn't it, Martin? Thank you so much, and thanks for joining us this morning. We'll see you soon.
We stand corrected.
Thanks for having me today.
Thanks a lot, Martin. Enjoyed that.